So ever since this thing got released all those months ago, quite a few of you have been continuously asking me if I'm ever going to make a video on it. And to be honest with you, I was never really that interested in a fat version of the Mirage. However, ever since they buffed the Magic 2 missiles, this has shifted the meta a little bit at top tier. And by a little bit, I do mean like quite significantly, especially when it comes to dogfighting. So, the fact that this thing gets 8 of those missiles, I decided to give Fat Amy, or the Garage 4000, whatever you want to call it, a chance and see how she performs. Now, the thing that worried me the most about this plane was the fact that it essentially does every single thing worse than the Mirage 2000, but sits at a higher battle rating, the only difference being really that it has like twice the missile payload. So what I did is I got my favourite Swede for half an hour, and we just ran some one-on-one, some duels of him flying some, popular planes that you'd find at top tier, like the F-16C for instance, and me obviously in the Garage 4000. Now, the footage you're going to be seeing here for the next couple minutes in the video is probably gonna prove to you that we are slowly getting to that point in War Thunder now where flight performance doesn't really matter all that much. At least it's not as much as it used to, and it is more about the weapon payload. As you can see, I'm firing off a Magic 2 missile there. I do have them locked on radar, which the reason I'm doing that is because even though it's an IR guided missile, getting a radar lock can kind of help you sort of defeat the pre-flaring. And he's getting a little bit too much separation here. I fire off my third Magic, and as you can see, it kind of just ends up getting him, even though it's flaring. Now, obviously, it's going to ignore the flares in that case because it has IRCCM, and it's kind of like a rear aspect kind of like shot, right? However, as you can see in this clip here, we merge again down at low altitude. I'm going fairly slowly, 400 knots, which is like, I mean, actually, it's about optimum merging speed. I get the radar lock here, get the missile off, and even in the front aspect, it ends up ignoring all of the flares there. Now, that was quite close range as well. But it's kind of tricky for him because he can't get too far away either, because then he's going to risk giving me position, right? Giving me nose position, giving me that rear aspect shot, in which case the Magic 2 is just going to ignore all of the flares. So he has to stay somewhat close to me, but because he's in an F-16, which is traditionally a rate fighter, or it's a rate fighter when it's fighting a Mirage, let's say, he has to sort of opt for the 2 circle, which is, and that's kind of what he's doing here. And it's actually kind of working. I'm outside the turn circle, but I decided to just pull the nose in and whatever. I dump a bunch of speed, but it doesn't matter because I get the Magic off. And because it's a rear aspect shot or a rear quarter shot, it ignores all the flares and ends up shooting him down. So he was really struggling in the F-16, so he decided to switch over to the Gripen, which is arguably one of the best planes in the game right now. And the Gripen does do a better job at defeating the Mirage, just because its rate speed is a lot lower than that of the F-16, so essentially the radius is a lot tighter, so basically he can stay closer to me as he does his thing, right? Now he's trying to do like some vertical things. He's trying to bleed me of energy, which isn't, it's not always the best, your best course of action really, because if the Mirage doesn't have any energy, and you need energy to turn, eventually you are going to increase distance. That's just physics, that's just how it works, right? And that's exactly what you're going to see in this clip here. Last clip, by the way, I just ended up gunning him down, even though if he was too close, he was denying me the Magic shot there, but, if he's too close, eventually I'm just going to gun him down, right? So it's kind of like, well, either way, he's screwed. And here he forced the vertical again, trying to bleed me of my energy, and this is exactly what I was just on about earlier. It's like, I'm so slow and he has to maintain speed in order to turn, and what's going to end up happening is he's going to open the gap, I'm going to turn the nose around because it's a delta wing and it can do that, and I'm just going to fire the Magic off at him in a rear aspect. There you go. Radar lock, pre-flaring doesn't matter, and he's dead. Now, we also tried one at night here just for shits and giggles. There's no real reason for it or anything other than it looks cool, but you get my point, right? When he's in the F-16C, there's nothing really he can do because he can't 2-circle me, because the F-16 needs to be at about 400 knots in order to do that, or 800 kilometers an hour. And when he's at that kind of speed, it just creates too much distance between us, and then I'd whip the nose around eventually, get a rear aspect Magic shot, and he's dead. But he can't go low speed either, because once we do get into that low speed 1-circle rolling scissors kind of thing, the Mirage is just so much better at those kind of speeds than the F-16, so much more maneuverable, and if I don't missile him, I'm gonna gun him down, right? So he's kind of screwed either way. And by the way, Flax and I, we're not duelists, right? We don't practice this stuff an hour every single day like some other guys do. We're just like, we know what we're doing in the game. We're EC players, we've been playing for quite a while. We know what we're doing, but we don't do this like competitively, right? But So maybe there is a way for the F-16C to win this fight, but I think in the vast majority of attempts that the average player is going to do, it's going to be a winning. It's going to be a win for the Mirage, just simply because of the magics. So to reiterate what I was saying earlier, like yes, this thing does have worse flight performance than its younger sibling, but does it really matter when the flight performance is still good enough? Because you don't really need to fly this thing within 100% of the enemy aircraft. Like 60 or 70 is enough, right? And then the magic does the rest of the work for you. I mean, yeah, I did pull that number out of my ass, but you get the point I'm trying to make, right? I also don't want to give off a wrong impression here. I'm not complaining about this. I'm not even criticizing. I actually quite like how powerful the magic is now, especially on the Mirage platform. I quite like how you're forced into these like more close range knife fights now, rather than it just sort of being like, well, who has the better energy retention, which is what War Thunder was just kind of like back in the day. And you know, it's more modern as well. You see this if you ever watch like Grounding Sidewinders videos or something. You know, it's very rare you see him, you know, fly to something like an F-22 whenever it's not anything other than a gunfight and there's missiles in play. It's very rare you see him sort of get distance and rate fight the other guy, right? It's always just like some sort of like little rolling scissor that they have going, and it's nice to kind of like start to see that in War Thunder now as well. And I just wish the Mirage kind of had like a counter for it right now, right? And what I mean is like something that has really good slow speeds and nose authority coupled with, you know, like a good dogfight missile like the R-73, for instance. And I think the only sort of two good planes right now would be something like the MiG-29G and the flanker, and then the MiG-29G is kind of like, it doesn't really have the low speed nose authority that I would like. And while the flanker can point the nose wherever it wants at any kind of speed, the amount of altitude it loses in that time while it does it, it's a bit ridiculous. So I think the Mirage is still kind of yeah, I mean it is the best sort of slow speed dogfighting platform, and I think it will be for a very long time, at least until we get like thrust vectoring yeah, planes. I mean, I don't know, like even something like an Su-30, I can't imagine sort of being able to outmaneuver a Mirage just because of the altitude that it's going to lose. So I think we might actually have to wait for like an F-22 or something, I don't know. But I like where this is going, I like the idea behind it, but yes, it is very, very powerful the way it is right now. Notice though how I didn't say that it's overpowered, because in order for something to be overpowered, I think there needs to be like no counter for it. There's no counterplay to it. With the Mirage, yes, it will beat you in a dogfight, but then just don't engage with it in a dogfight, right? It's exactly the same thing as like when we all started playing this game and we probably went down the American or the German tree or whatever, and we came across the Japanese planes for the first time, the Zeros, the A6M5s or whatever. First of all, you're going to try and dogfight them, and then you're going to realise, oh, okay, I have absolutely no chance. And then you probably think, well, the Japanese planes are just overpowered or whatever. But eventually you realise, okay, you're faster. Just don't engage with them in a dogfight. Use your speed advantage, your energy advantage, your whatever props have. I don't know. I haven't played them in a while. But you know, when it comes, you know, if you're in an F-16 here, let's just project this onto top tier now. If you're in an F-16 and you have a Mirage 2000 on the other team or a Mirage 4000. And you see him on radar 10 miles in front of you, just go at him at full speed. Fire your Sparrows, fire your AIM-9Ms, and if he does manage to dodge everything you have to throw at him before the merge, get to the merge and then just fly straight on full burner. He's going to have to turn around, and he's not going to be able to catch you at that kind of, you know, if you're going that kind of speed. And if he does end up following you through the whole map, just call for backup or fly back to your airfield or whatever, and the Rolands will deal with him, right? Okay, so I was just kind of throwing all of the modern Mirages we have in the game into one sort of pot here, but for the rest of the video I'll try and sort of stick to the Garage 4000, right, which is the plane that we're actually featuring here in the video. And when it comes to EC, it's going to just become even more clear that this thing isn't overpowered. So with EC, it's obviously not just dogfighting performance that you want. You want staying power, which either, you know, i.e. your fuel load, or your resources that you have, i.e. countermeasures, weapon loadout and stuff like that, and avionics and top speed. Let me start with the avionics. The avionics, you essentially get the same package that the Mirage 2000C gets, which is the 11.7 Mirage, by the way. And that is that you get I mean, it's a fairly decent radar. However, you only get an HDN mode, which means that you're only going to be able to really track people reliably in front aspect, you know, meaning that they're flying towards you. If they're flying away from you, then the radar kind of has trouble picking targets up. The TWS mode is also only like, it only gets like 3 degrees of elevation, so it can be kind of difficult to to scan large parts of the sky sort of like reliably. You do get the good RWR, which identifies the plane looking at you and also gives you the distance to them as well without them actually having to lock you up like the Russian RWRs do, for instance. So in that case, the avionics are kind of all right. The radar's all right for what you sort of need it to do. However, when it comes to 12.7 or 12.3 or this, this kind of like top tier sort of bracket, then it is a little bit lackluster at this point. Now when it comes to fuel load, you get around 40 minutes worth of fuel for this. You do get 2 very small drop tanks that come along with the magic missiles. So if you take the full 8 magics instead of the 6 magics, you have to take 2 drop tanks along because the drop tanks have 2 mounts each for the magic 2 missiles. This also means that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think if you fire off all of your missiles, the drop tanks actually still stay attached to the plane, so that is going to give you a drag penalty as well. Just something worth thinking about if you're thinking about if you should take 8 magics or only the 6. However, when it comes to fuel, I always take between 20 and 30 minutes because the 40-minute fuel load, especially if you're carrying the 2 drop tanks, is just a little bit too much for this plane. Now, one of the major issues with this plane is the combination of the relatively low flare count and the relatively low top speed as well. Now, the rip speed, don't get me wrong, is around the same as the other jets around its sort of BR bracket. However, because it's... I can only assume that this is a very draggy plane at high speeds, that you don't really have enough engine power to sort of push to that brake limit, to that rip limit fairly consistently. Especially on the deck, and even when you do gain a little bit of altitude, you notice that this just it's not an incredibly fast plane. I wouldn't call it slow, but it's just you are going to get outrun by stuff like flankers and F-16s, and this is also a plane where a lot of the time, most of the time, you are going to be playing this with only Fox 2 missiles on board, so you don't get any of the long range missiles. Not that the Marcher 530 is really a long range missile anyway to begin with. But you are going to be chasing people quite a lot in this thing, and then couple that with the low flare count as well, you get about 100 and oh god, I've forgotten. I think it's 112. Correct me if I'm wrong. 112 countermeasures, which are on double pops, which means you only get about 56 pops per flyout, which isn't a lot when you're facing stuff like AIM-9Ms or R-73, stuff that you have to pre-flare quite a lot. And on maps like Sinai, Denmark, Smolensk, whatever, these like really open maps where there isn't a lot of terrain to sort of hide behind, people are just going to spot you from across the map, and it can lead to situations, especially if you do get into 1 or 2 like little close range skirmishes, right? I don't even want to call them dogfights anymore. It can be quite difficult to actually make it back to base and sort of escape that kind of area, because you're just going to have hordes of enemies to sort of come after you, and you can't really outrun anything. So it's not, you're not a Harrier, right? You're not like super mega slow or anything like that, but it's just you are the slowest of the top. Of the top bracket kind of supersonic fighter jets, whatever you 4th gens, whatever you want to call. And obviously in situations like that, you can burn through your countermeasures quite quickly. So all in all, when it comes to like how you should play this thing, I definitely recommend picking maps that have a little bit of terrain on them, so not like Smolensk or Stalingrad that you've seen in the video so far. Afghanistan can be a little bit tricky sometimes, depending on like how BVR orientated the enemy team is, because obviously you kind of want to stay low if you're carrying only Fox 2 missiles. However, best maps for this would definitely be something like Vietnam or Spain or something like that, right? Something with low to the ground, a lot of terrain. You can hide behind, you can sneak attack, stuff like that. Also, don't be afraid to turn your radar off at times. You do not need to have it on at all times. If you spot something on radar 10 miles in front of you and you can sort of see the dot visually, just turn the radar off. It can't hurt. Fly up to them and just sneak a sneaky little magic 2 up behind them, they won't even see it coming. Use your RWR to find targets as well. Use your RWR to identify targets as well in a lot of cases. It's very good for doing that without giving away your position. This becomes very handy when you're facing the American team. And in general, just, I know what I said earlier, but it's the same sort of, top tier stuff. Try to avoid dogfights, fly through situations, don't stay in situations. Look from the outside in, if that makes sense, right? You don't want to be inside the melee, even if you are in the best dogfighter in the game, or one of the best dogfighters in the game. Now, as far as answering the question of is this thing worth the grind goes, then I would say I think it is, providing you already have the Mirage 2000-5 and you only have a couple planes left to go. It's definitely not a plane that you would sort of grind out an entire tech tree for. But it is, you know, again, like I said, it does everything worse than the Mirage 2000-5, worse avionics, worse flight performance. However, you do get more missiles, which makes it better for seal clubbing. Seal clubbing, obviously, if you're against people that are a little bit less experienced, you don't need to bring your A game in order to take them down. And obviously, in that case, having more missiles on board is going to net you more kills. However, if you're in one of those sweaty matches where you're up against the entire Woby team, then yeah, you're going to want to play in that's a little bit more survivable, and carrying capacity of weapons isn't necessarily going to be the top priority anymore. In that case, you take the Mirage 2000-5. In any other case, you can pick the Mirage 4000. It's really up to you. So it is a fun plane. You can get kills with it, but yeah, just it's up to you if you want to sort of give it a go or not. Here I'm trying to fight a flanker here. I was a little bit too fast. I was kind of scared to go lower on speed because I thought I was going to get third party there. So I was trying to sort of maintain my speed and get the nose round at the same time. But obviously my teammate makes sure that that is not going to happen. Average American team, everyone. But yeah, that was pretty much the end of that game there. I know I didn't sort of finish the first one either. I just like ending the game in a hangar. So the final score was like 10 to something. What is it? 10 to 3? Yeah, with one of those being the team kill. So it's not an amazing score. I mean, this is something that sort of I think reflects the plane pretty well. Also, Stalingrad at top tier is just an absolute cesspool of, I mean, it's horrible. It's like shipment of Call of Duty, basically, if anyone played COD 4. But yeah, guys, my Discord is linked in the description if you guys want to join a sim-orientated Discord server. We're pretty active in there, and it's pretty easy to find people to sort of play with if you are looking for that. If you're interested in control schemes, I have a video up on my channel showcasing my controls, as well as on the Discord we have a bunch of like links for keyboard and mouse control setups, my controller control setup as well, and there's some alternatives on as well if you're sort of interested in that kind of stuff. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Cheers.